All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. The Town of Wakefield Board of Appeals for May 11th, 2022. Start with a roll call of board members. Jim McBain.
Here.
Chip Tarbell.
Here.
Joe Pride.
Here.
Tom Lucy.
Here.
Greg McIntosh.
Here.
Mike Feely on his way. We'll recognize Mike if he's on his way when he gets here. And again, Amy Wall is excused. She let us know she had a conflict again tonight. Okay, with that, let's proceed to the reading of the legal notice. Jim, if you please.
Board of Appeals, May 11, 2022. Consistent with the governor's orders extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, every effort will be made to allow the public to review and/or listen to the meeting in real time. If you do not have a camera or a microphone on your computer, you may use the following dial-up: 1-301-715-8592, meeting ID 869-5305-2273, passcode 286839. Please only use dial-in or computer, not both, as audio feedback will distort the meeting. This meeting will be audio and video recorded in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. This location is accessible to people with disabilities. Wakefield provides reasonable accommodation and/or language assistance free of charge upon request. If you are a person with disability or require information or material in the alternate format, or if you require any other accommodations, please contact the Town Disability Coordinator, William Renault, Town Engineer, 781-246-6308, as far in advance of the event as possible. Every effort will be made to grant your request. Advise notification able the town to make reasonable arrangements to remove any accessible barriers for you. Or continuation list. Continued hearings: 2. Eugene Kaminsky and Elaine Ostrowski Kaminsky, application for variance under Article 10, Section 190-66 for the requirements of Article 6 and Table 2 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw related to additions to be constructed onto an existing dwelling, application for determination and/or finding with respect to the continuation and extension of non-conforming use under Article 9, Section 190-50 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw related to any addition to be constructed onto the existing dwelling. Property is shown as map 39, lot parcel OM8 of the assessors map and is located at 11 Andrew Road. 3, 22-58, George and Laura Cadaris, application for variance in Article 4, Section 190-31C 6 and Section 190-31C 5 of the Wakefield zoning bylaw to construct an above ground swimming pool in the side yard and reduce the requirement side yard setbacks. Property is shown as map 11, lot parcel 70-95B of the assessors map and is located at 28 Church Street. Board of Appeals.
Thank you, Jim. All right. And Mickey Feely, you with us now?
Yes.
Welcome. Yeah. Thank you. So for the record, Mr. Feely has joined us. Okay. So as usual, there's a couple matters we'll take in case anyone's here for specific hearings. We received 2 requests from Derek Popek and David Michael Johnson, Studio 26 Architects, for the property at 259 Vernon Street, requesting that we continue the case to the next meeting on May 25th to allow more time to provide additional materials and think through our project.
I move that we continue this to the next meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any comments on the continuance? Okay, I will just add that we received this pretty late tonight, and I did remind Mr. Popak that, again, if he's got updated plans, we need to see them the Friday before the next hearing, right? Or else, again, we get him the day of. He sounded like they were close from his correspondence, but needed more time. So I just reminded him that we really need him the Friday before so we can have time to prepare and provide comments on that night. So that's my only comment, just for awareness for everyone. But other than that, voting members. So Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that is unanimous. Anyone's here for 259 Vernon, that will hopefully be heard at our May 25th hearing. Second, from Attorney Brian McGrail, dated today, from Noria Energy Corp., 356 Wall Street, case numbers 22, 52, 53, 54, and 55, requesting that the matter be continued to the meeting on May 25th, 2022. And we're working on additional information revisions that were requested by the board at our last meeting.
I move that we continue this to the next meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? All right, same voting members. Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So if anyone's here for that application, it will hopefully be heard at our next hearing on May 25th. So with that, we will start at the top of the list. Continued hearings, case numbers 2150, 51, and 52. CCF Quantipower Property Company LLC at 200 to 400 Quantipower Parkway.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Good evening, Brian.
Record Attorney Brian McGrail representing the applicant. With me tonight is Matt D'Amico from Cabot and Forbes. Eric Samuelson is here from Cube 3. Steph Thial is here from Cube 3. Who am I missing, Matt? Is that all we have tonight?
All we have.
Okay, great. So we have completed some homework assignments for time efficiency. I'm going to get right into it. The board had asked, the first item that we'd like to address is the board had asked for a rendering of the garage. If you remember, we had added those vertical elements to the garage, but we did not have a rendering of it, and the board had requested a rendering so you could see how that view would be from the highway. So with that said, Matt, could you please bring that up?
Yeah, Eric, you mind sharing your screen here?
Yep, I can take care of that.
So we actually had a number of slides here, not a long number, a short number, that we just want to go through, starting with the rendering as well as some of the views. So I'll let Eric go through that here.
Sure. Yeah, and just a quick refresher for everybody. These were the elevations we had shown at the last meeting. We had asked for a little bit more information from kind of a perspective view. So we have rendering and a couple of views as well. So to hop right into it. So here's an updated rendering that captures what we're showing in the building elevations. This is to kind of capture the feel and look that we're intending along the Route 128 side of Building 3 here. You can see a key plan in the bottom left that shows where we are. We stepped back a little bit to the brush just because we were trying to get a better look of the building. If we were right on the ring road here, you wouldn't be able to get the view. So we were trying to make sure that people had a better view of both the garage elements and the building here. So all the landscaping you see here is what is in our site and landscape plan. We have a second view where we took out a couple of trees just so that we could have a little bit better of a view. This isn't realistic, but we thought it was helpful to demonstrate some more of the design that we're doing on this project. So some of the updates you'll see here, some of the balconies and openings that we have along the facade. This matches the other side of Building 3 that had a good reception when we presented that. And then the building here, and I'll zoom in a little bit just for everyone's reference, where we're talking about these vertical wood slat elements, across the garage facade that help it blend in a bit with some of the landscaping and trees that we have along here. When we were thinking about the facade here, this is not a very heavy pedestrian area. This is up against the highway. So we were thinking about this from kind of a highway speed and how that is viewed. So some of the thought process behind this is, it's not going to be viewed from a necessarily a standstill, at least not all the time. So we also have a couple of other views.
Eric, let's stay here for a minute, because I think this is kind of the meat of it.
Sure.
We're happy to entertain any comments from the board, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Board members, yeah. So what's that wood? Can you just describe the wood element? What's the intent of the look, the material? Is it real wood or something that is a low maintenance kind of?
Yeah, it'd be a low maintenance. So the material that we're kind of thinking of right now is a Fundermax wood panel that can be used. It has a wood grain look to it. It'll look vertical. We have a couple of examples I could show as well.
Yeah, let's look at that for a second. I think one of our intent here, or part of our intent, was to have something that would work for the garage that would be thematic with what we're showing on the wood look materials we're using elsewhere in the project. This is something that's.
So this is an example. There's they have a bunch of different textures. We just compiled a couple. That's an example of what the panels are. And then we pulled a couple of precedent images of buildings they're on. This one at the top we pulled because it has a similar feel to, I think, what we're intending. Then you can see this one at the bottom where they're using multiple different wood grain textures.
Hey Dave, this is Greg. I got a question. My comment last time was more like, why couldn't we do more? This seems like it, I mean, I know you say blend in with so few on there that to me doesn't look like it blends at all. What, maybe you hurt yourself bringing up this picture here, but that top, what would be top right? What's preventing us from doing more, but like a louvered look like that or something like that? I know you talked about airflow and stuff. Of course, I'm not an engineer, but I would be surprised if having more, I know we're not going to close it up, but having more really affects the airflow through there than what's there now. I mean, there's almost next to nothing on there now on the rendering.
So let me put my 10 cents in here. So after Greg mentioned this, I looked at this a little more because, of course, on my little subgroup, basically discussing this whole elevation, both on the ends and this, I think we got focused a lot on the rest of the building and not so much on the garage. The concept really was discussed briefly, but I agree with Greg that there probably needs to be more. Whether it goes higher, I like the undulation, but I think it could be a little more dense. Now that's not to go, in my mind, not to go crazy dense, but basically there could be more on this as well. Whether that's doubling it or just a third more or something like that, I think requires some thought, but I agree with Greg that there should be more here on this garage to make it really stand out as an element without just sort of passing it by.
Yeah, Jim, and I know that we talked about for a second there that you're going to see it from highway speed, but I mean, you go by the building that's there now and you're going at highway speed and you see it. So it's not like you're not going to see it and everyone's going to know, hey, that's Wakefield right there. They just built this beautiful building. And I mean, we've put so much time and I think Jim met multiple times on the back of the building. And like Jim said, the building itself has been changed, but the garage to me has not. And just a question, is there parking on the top? I just don't remember. On the top level? Okay.
Yep.
Of course, highway speed
Yeah, so-
at rush hour isn't what, flying by.
I think we can address that briefly here. I mean, so I think, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're kind of targeting here is, the maximum amount of coverage that doesn't get us into the requirement, which is a percentage requirement, to have to mechanically ventilate the garage, which is honestly a considerable amount of cost and is going to require us to, provide mechanical equipment on top of the garage, which would be larger than any other mechanical equipment you would see in this project. So that,
Okay, so then I guess I would present you with a yes or no question. Is this the maximum you can do without putting mechanicals on the garage?
It is.
The absolute maximum,
It-
and do we know that?
if we went for a perforated
is.
system, which wouldn't have the same look, it wouldn't have the woodsy look, yeah, you could get more. But in terms of what a solid system, Eric, I'll let you address that, but I believe this is what we're up against.
I
Yeah,
just, before you
I'll-
answer that, can I just add on to, how come there's none on the top floor? Or is that just, am I seeing this wrong?
Can you zoom in? Yeah, thank you.
And I guess that would be part of my question is the top floor open because you count the open space in the aggregate, or is it just each floor? You know what I mean? Like if you don't cover the top floor, does that help your percentage?
Not necessarily. It's more about the size of the garage and kind of the floors that are covered within it. So we ran that. We were double checking because it was a good question last time, and we did check it on our end. We're right at the number. We can't add any more based on this.
Or can you go up? Like the ones that
We-
stop right at the first floor, can they go up?
That would be adding more than.
Well, no,
That would be
that's
adding,
not,
that would be adding more. We could flip them.
okay, so
But we
that
couldn't-
was.
we
then
can't-
my
we-
earlier-
We can't add more square feet of what's there. We could move them around if there's a certain orientation that you guys like better. But as far as the density goes, this is the max density that we can do without changing it.
So gentlemen, I have another question. You came up and proposed this as a way to go. I've seen a number of open air campuses, parking lots, one being UMass Lowell, some others around that have a mesh product wrapping the whole facade. And the mesh product has designs on them, has intrigue, has interest. What made you think to go this direction rather than one of those mesh products?
I personally don't think those mesh products match the intent that we have and the character that we have on the site right now. I think you would find that in a more, I want to say urban environment, where this, we were really trying to fit in with kind of the natural environment that we're in.
Yeah, I think that what, at least some of the design direction I tried to give, initially we were gonna go with a completely open air garage, no skin or anything, just like 100 quad pallet next door, or like the Everly on Audubon Road. That was initially what we were gonna do, but once we started to think more about how we were designing the back of this building, I think trying to take some of the clues from the wood look, candidly, originally we were thinking about it just around the entrance, having a high density around the entrance of the garage, which would created a nice kind of visual, look as another front door to the project. And then, we got the comment that there should be more, so we tried adding some more on here, but I think we were trying to be contextual with the wood look that we show elsewhere in the project here.
To my eye, if I can just chime in, maybe it's just my OCD tendencies, but it just seems sort of random, like there's no pattern to it. There's a bunch that go to the top floor on the left, but then none on the right. And then the ones in between, some go up, some, I can't discern any sort of pattern. And maybe it's just me and my lack of eye here. If that's the intent and it's like a style thing, then okay. But I'm just not seeing it. I'd rather see some sort of pattern that, every
Yeah.
so many units go to the top floor and then every so many woods go to the third floor. You know what I'm saying? There'd be some sort of pattern that would go across that whole face. This just seems sort of random to me, and I just doesn't do it for me. But if there's a reason why you did this and there's a style thing to it that I just can't appreciate, then so be it. But those are my 2 cents.
I do understand your comment, Dave, but the pattern here is the randomness. And
Okay.
I do apologize that it goes against everything that you like.
Okay.
Eric,
Yeah,
just-
random isn't my suit, but I can go with it if that works for everyone else.
My last comment would just be that we talked about, or someone mentioned that, I don't know what the mesh things look like, not having worked with them or seen them before. But someone mentioned that they look more urban. What does look urban to me is an open parking garage. So, I mean, to me, that would look less urban than just this. And maybe we could make it look less urban than what you're referring to by, getting a certain color or something. But so, I mean, I don't want to beat this drum if I'm the only one who doesn't like it. I mean, it is a voting board, so it's just me.
Eric, is it possible you showed that cut sheet or whatever that was that showed it kind of louvered? Does that affect the percentages that you got to deal with? I mean, can this just be like sunshades across or something? I mean,
I can figure out exactly what that would entail. I guess my next question would be like, what angle would you guys want to see, since you're going to see this from every angle? Right now it's flat and it kind of serves both directions. If we're going to louver it, my concern would be that we're only going to expose it to one side and block the other.
I get what you're saying.
I guess
Those are
I
to the
don't,
people coming from the north. They're further away.
unlike Dave, I'm not disturbed by the randomness of it because it intended to be something like a forest where no trees grow in, the same random nature. But I don't believe that this is going to, putting a few more on this is going to disturb the airflow. You've got a whole ramp system in the middle of this that's providing air up through the building. You've got, I guess, 3 sides of the building of this garage that's open as well. And I don't assume these boards are going all the way in on either end where you'll never see them to begin with. So I've certainly dealt with enough garages to look at this and say, this is pretty open, quite frankly. So I don't know how the calculations were run, but I'm not buying it at the moment that there can't be more put in here to basically give it a little more texture.
Would it be helpful if so from the perspective you're looking at right now, you have some that are on the side of the garage. Would it be helpful to move some of those out from that part and put them on the highway side so that it's, that the screening is really on the highway side?
I'm not, how far do they go back? It looks like
They don't. I mean, as soon as you hit that building line, it kind of cuts off, but we do have them on that side as well.
yeah, but that's not gonna, it still leaves probably 3/4 of the garage that's open to ventilation in between those and the buildings on either end. So I just stealing from Peter to pay Paul, I don't know, it just seems like there's a heck of a lot of open space in this whole garage. Plus you got the shaft of the ramps going up through the middle. I can't see that there's a need for mechanical ventilation if you even put more of them on here. I just don't see it. Sorry.
I guess my only other thought here would be if people's concern is about some of the top, I mean, would moving any of these from the bottom towards the top, would that appeal to anybody?
I didn't mind when you said flip it earlier. I mean, it seemingly, unless I'm mistaken, I'm trying to think of it now, you'd see more of the top coming down the highway than you would the bottom. Maybe I'm wrong, if anyone.
My opinion, I like it the way it is. If you do that, I think it would look top heavy. And to Jim's point, I wouldn't steal from the side, because if you steal from the side, then it would look like you forgot to do one side of the building. So my personal opinion, I kind of like the way it is, random and less in the top, because like I said, it would look top heavy if you flipped it. That's my opinion.
I guess one of the things that I would say is it even necessary? It would a clean, simple look like the garage next door make more sense to me. This looks like they either forgot to do something, or it was a bad attempt at blocking and hiding it, or it draws more attention to it. I'm wondering if it's even necessary, or should it just look like the garage next door?
If you do go that route, Chip, I would I'd like it to look more like the garage next door. Doesn't that have some sort of texture in the wall or something like that?
Probably.
Instead of just, if you do go, if that's the route it goes, instead of just being cinder, or not cinder blocks, cement walls, whatever they are.
I think they have a precast panel with some stone or something like that embedded in it.
Yeah, you can do precast with scoring and things like that.
We
So I
would
don't-
certainly be amenable to doing that. I think also something that we could look at more, so it doesn't really show on this because we intentionally kept it out. But, you know, per a comment that Jim had a few meetings ago, we introduced 16 1-foot caliber evergreen trees in front of this garage. So I think something that's maybe lost from this render is just like, there is a pretty substantial landscape screen that we've added in that I think in the real world is gonna have be a real visual help here. And I'd be amenable definitely to going further on that. Like if adding even more, you know, evergreen buffer in helps, you know, let's do it.
I was about to say earlier that actually, if you could press those green trees up against the garage, they'd look great, a little taller, and even if they weren't real, if they were a design, but that's just me. But I like the idea of more trees.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of more trees and less random. As long as you don't randomize the trees. No.
I'll let landscape know.
All right, well, I think you've heard all our feedback. Maybe we need to see a clean version of this and next time, unless you can do it now and that's a layer and you can take it right off. I don't know. All right.
Probably not with a rendering.
No, I don't know what application he's running, if this isn't a PDF or some tool, but anyway. So we can see that next time. I mean, we don't want to belabor this too much, but there's a lot to cover. Were there other aspects of this facade we want to get into?
I guess just briefly, so I understand the direction a little bit better here. So I think what we would look to do is we would look to take off those fins and do something that is more attractive on the actual garage in terms of the paneling or what have you, as the garage at 100 watt of power does, and then add in, add in more landscape, both in front of the garage and in kind of this grassy area that you see here as a screen. Does that sound reasonable?
It works for me. Board members?
Yep.
Well, let's give them some direction here. So is that the way we'd like them to go rather than?
Well, I mean, I think this is one of those things that we may need to see some options. So we have an option here. I'd like to see the more landscaping option. And quite frankly, I'd love to see a mesh option to convince me that that's not the way we should go. Because I've seen them with prints of trees and, you know, they just, it blends in pretty, the ones I've seen don't look urban and kind of do the trick because you don't see the cars. But I'm kind of thinking for my taste, simple would be better here. And I think with cluttered, to me, this looks cluttered, like something's forgotten. They only did half of it. It doesn't work for me.
Is that wood paneling on the other part of the building there? A faux wood?
Yep.
Could you show one with that on the levels? Just bringing it across? That'd be kind of neat.
I'm not sure I don't
can-
sure you want that. What you want is you want this building to break the length of the building up,
You're
not just in projecting forward, but also being a different element within the length of the building. So you got a larger section, a middle section, and a far section.
I get it.
I guess I still like the concept as it is.
I think we need to see the other one and just visually, and if we can do a mesh one that, and then we've got three and we just decide next time. Through some sort of quorum, we just decide, yeah, this is the one, let's go with this one. Okay, can we do that?
We can do that. Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, what else do we have?
Okay, so I think we're done with cube 3, right, Matt?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so the next thing that we wanted to talk about was the phasing plan that you would ask for to give an idea of how this project would be constructed. So Matt, you can handle that, correct?
Yep, let me, screen showing?
Yep.
So, so this is what we've been working on with our construction contractors as well as with Cube 3 as well, of how the delivery of this project would be phased. And when I use the term phasing, the intention is that this would be, building permits that are filed around the same time, and it is built in a sequence, but it is not built in different time periods. It's all kind of continuous construction. So specific consideration was made towards phase 1 being the first phase, as that's where a lot of the project amenity is, as well as that's where the restaurant is. That is, so building 1 here would be the phase 1 of the project. The rest of the project would all be under construction at this point too. With phase 1 being surface parked during that phase. Phase 2 is one part of building 3, including the garage. It's important that that garage gets built in an early part of this project. There will be a firewall between these two different phases of building 3, phase 2 and phase 3. From a building code perspective, they're likely to be treated as 2 completely different buildings. And so, phase 3 would be completed shortly thereafter. Based on kind of what we're talking here, we're anticipating a construction commencement, meaning the beginning of abatement and demolition in the 3rd quarter of this year, with immediate phase 1 delivery in the 2nd quarter of 2024, phase 2 delivery in the 4th quarter of 2024, phase 3 delivery in the 1st quarter of 2025. So the entirety of building 3 done in 1st quarter of 2025, and phase 4, which is building 2, to be completed in the 2nd quarter of 2025. This is, there's a lot of design that happens between special permit approval and our building permit. So there's a lot of coordination that of course still needs to happen on how exactly these buildings get built. But with the information that we have right now, this is our best assessment of how this project really gets built. In terms of site improvements external to these different phases, the public path that we've been talking about, that we would plan to have open concurrent with phase 2 of this project. Phase 2 being this year in the end of 2024. And much of the site parking, if not all of the site parking, would be delivered, or site surface parking would be delivered concurrent with phase 1, if not by the end of phase 2. It's kind of a lot of dates and a lot of phases that I just brought out there, but hopefully this is helpful to some extent.
Matt, I got a quick question. So if phase 1 is done and you're working on phase 4, will people be living in phase 1, and will they have access only on North Ave?
No, so as part of the easement agreement that exists between us, our neighbor, and the vacant parcel over by North Ave, we have to maintain that Quantico Parkway remains open, and there has to be access between North Ave and Lowell Street during the entirety of this construction phase. So that will always exist.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Okay, any other questions, board members? Okay, thanks, Matt.
Welcome.
Okay, next on our checklist, homework assignments, was that Matt updated the landscaping that was requested. It might change again depending on what we do with the garage, but now it is, now the plan is consistent. There has to be a reconciliation of the plan, Mr. Chair, so I don't even know if you want us to bring that up at this point. The plan, it's up to you.
Board members, do you want to see it, or do you want to wait for that reconciliation?
I can just make a quick note here of what, there's format stuff that changed. I just want to make clear that it's on here now because this was the request of the board. So there were 2 things. One, there was a note about irrigation. So the plans do dictate that all of the species here will be irrigated as appropriate. Another note another thing that we included was, rather than just using sheer quantities for the species that we're providing, we are locating every single species on the landscape plan attached to the schedule as well. So that is all noted throughout. As I mentioned, we'll work to add some more landscape buffer on the 128 side and incorporate that using the same format.
But Matt, is that locating every plant? Has that been done yet?
Yep, let me just bring it up very briefly here. So, we're very proud with our landscape schedule here, and we have a ton of stuff. So we were using, we have the schedule and we have an abbreviation for each one.
Yeah.
But you can see, for instance, here, these are 2 trees. I couldn't tell you off the cuff what those are, but if you were to go look at CC on this planting schedule, you'd be able to see exactly what type of tree that was. So it all kind of matches up.
Yeah, one thing we haven't done yet, and I've just seen this. Brian, is there a way I can get a paper copy of this? Because me getting on these for,
Yep.
I'd love to get a paper copy.
Yeah.
If I could.
Yeah. Matt, can you just have 10 delivered to me,
Yes.
and I'll get them distributed? I'll make sure all the board members get it.
That'd be great.
I can do that. One thing
It's
I'll
just
just
tough for
briefly
me to
note-
jump back and forth on a computer screen from the schedule to the split. I'm old.
One thing I'll just briefly note, the plantings that are outside of Quantified Parkway, kind of in these weather areas, those are largely dictated through a pretty intensive exercise with the Conservation Commission and exactly what they were looking to see.
Yeah.
So
And have they approved this plan yet?
they are, as according to what we discussed at the last meeting with them, they are planning to close the public hearing tomorrow night. And we'll be discussing the order of conditions for that project.
Because it will be important for us to see their order of conditions to make sure that it doesn't conflict with anything we've asked you to do, and compare and contrast that.
Okay. So we'll get hard copies so folks can have a look at it if they want. If that's easier for them. Okay. Thanks, Brian. What else?
Okay, thank you, Matt. The other thing that we submitted is the operation and maintenance plan. That was a request. We got that on Friday. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but if you want us to go into detail on that, Mr. Chair.
Board members, you want to bring it up and see if there's any
Well,
comments?
I guess I have.
I'd like to table it till next week if we can,
Okay,
because I haven't had a chance to, if you've looked at it, Tom, I haven't had a chance to.
If anyone has any comments, we'd like to hear them so we can
I'll
address.
just, it's just a general comment. Is that for me, it was a little tough that we're kind of toggling back and forth between the O&M and the conditions. And then another report, like, I'll give you the one example. The proponent talked about taking care of the invasive species along the shore. So as I was trying to find out if that was, where was that? It kind of wasn't in the conditions. It kind of wasn't in the O&M plan. And I think it might have been in another plan. So I just think in general, we're going to have to be very careful about how we coordinate the conditions, the O&M plan, and everything that gets done here. Because they've made some very generous offers to do those things, but I think we want to have them memorialized in the right way.
Right, and Tom, that was my point on Concom, because they've got to memorialize that as well in their conditions to allow that to happen on a continual basis.
So this is-
I mean, I thought the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the way we view the O&M manual is if there's someone sitting in the office, they should be able to pull this binder off the shelf and say, oh yeah, we're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do that right from that binder. I was really surprised before I even got into it which I didn't get that into it, but before I even opened it, that it was like, what, 9 pages for a project this size? I thought all the down in the weeds details would kind of be right here. And
Well, it incorporates a lot of the O&M from the stormwater management, which is part of like the invasive. So I think it can be
Yeah.
done better. I think, Tom, your point's well taken. Greg, yours is too. I think it just needs to be simplified. So you don't have to go through 7 reports to find something that might have to happen. So the point's well taken. We can work on that.
We'll circle back on this one. Everyone will have an opportunity to. And if you have an update, send it in advance, right? As usual. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. What else?
The only other thing that we wanted to talk about was we did have a subcommittee meeting with Mr. Tabell, Mr. McIntosh on the amenity aspects of the project in how to incorporate and welcome the public is part of those amenities and is part of the open space, the public space that's going to be available to kind of do a design or integrate it that when the public's walking down the path, as Greg had stated, that to make them feel welcome, not that, hey, you don't live here, so you better keep moving quick. So we had a really productive meeting, I think, with Greg and Chip, and which has resulted in, moving the bathrooms from where they were going to be and creating some public amenities. So Matt, if you could maybe just bring up that plan and we can talk about it. And then certainly it's probably more important for you guys to hear from Greg and Chip. But Matt can kind of set the table to give you an idea of how this public amenity aspect fits in.
Sure, yeah, so what we're looking at right here is just the middle of the project where buildings 1, 2, and 3 converge. We were, the conversation started more so with me floundering as to what we should be doing here. And to kind of discussing what we are doing for our residents, et cetera. And I think where we kind of ended up is like, obviously there's going to have to be delineation between public space and private space within buildings at certain points. But what can we do to try to create an area that it could be really a shared space between an indoor shared space between what the public can experience and what residents can experience, whether it's a place to, hang out and do some work from home space inside the building with Wi-Fi available, grab a cup of coffee while you're there, or, something from some kind of automated service, but kind of bringing that into the project a little bit. I'll let Chip and Greg talk here, but what we're thinking is, we were previously had an isolated restroom that was on the other side of building 1 over by the restaurant, bringing that into building 1, into the amenity space. Perhaps shifting the public safety office into this space as well, and offering, again, a space that is furnished by us that is, the type of space where the public and the private can kind of mesh. I'll leave it at that.
Matt, can you zoom out a little bit? You kind of tight there, just so that you can see where the path is and how that. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So Matt, you had kind of talked about that. You kind of look at this as the common on the other side of the lake for the public, right? That right now, even though that area is open, people really don't utilize it to sit and relax, and they just kind of zip through when they're jogging a lake or riding their bike, but nobody really, plops a
I
blanket.
think that's big, Brian. In terms of, as you all know, we spent about a year of time before ever seeing you all with the Friends of the Lake, trying to understand what they wanted out of the redevelopment of this site. And one of the biggest things that was most clear to us was the fact that the existing condition, the front yard of that, even though it's actually public land, does not feel very welcoming. And how can we do the opposite of that with this project and really bring people into the site, make it feel like this front yard is another common for the town. So, in kind of a furtherance of that, I think, we're hoping do make some landscape moves that make this plaza a little bit more welcoming to bring people in. And then also offering the opportunity for a certain amount of space within the building one amenity, as you know, a reasonable place where the public and private can mesh.
And maybe providing Wi-Fi for people outside,
That's right.
that people that, you know, want to sit on the grass can have public Wi-Fi. So if they want to go
That's
on the
great.
lake and do some work or log on, they can have a, you know, there's a code available for them to do that. So the way this was designed before, you know, this is kind of the patio type area. And, you know, I think what Greg and Chip said, well, your public bathrooms are, you know, like, you know, 300 yards away, but probably exaggerating. But so, you know, what is going to make the public feel comfortable to be able to go in here and say, yeah, I can go in here, or kind of look suspectly and say, I don't know if I can go in there or not. Is that private or public? Or, and so the suggestion was put the public bathrooms in this area. So, you know, there's going to be signs for public bathrooms. So obviously if there's public bathrooms, it's going to welcome the public, and they're going to know that they can go in to that area and mingle. And there'll be an indoor space where they could, you know, buy something, a bottle of water, and they can use the restroom, and maybe another amenity to buy, you know, something from some machines. So this was kind of the goal. And then Greg and Chip, subsequent to this, Matt and John thought it's probably best in this area to put the public safety office here too. You know, it's just kind of, it's nice to have that public safety presence when you have everybody mingling together. So that's kind of the thought process. And obviously, Chip and Greg, I think you guys probably have something to say.
Feel free, Gary.
I thought Chip would jump right in.
No,
This is the first time
I'm
he's
holding
been,
back.
first time he's been speechless. Yeah, I mean, my comment was, or my thought process was, you know, the buildings are down the other, the restaurant was down the other end of the building. It essentially was kind of a seemed like, I'm not saying that this is what they were trying to do. It seemed like a throwaway, like, yeah, we need some public space. Here it is. It's down this end. Bathrooms are down this end. Restaurants down this end. My thought process was, well, there's this new path. You know, we're saying it's inviting, but it really doesn't call people in. It seems to be keep walking. This isn't, you know, it's a nice path and that's it. I think we had a pretty constructive conversation and that they'll come back to us. I think we said next meeting, with some options here, you know, changing the landscaping possibly, or the grading a little bit to this sort of patio area. And we also talked about, so to make sure we're on the same page, some of the programming that, you know, we won't make them commit to, I don't think, in conditions, but things like, what do we say, food trucks, or, you know, farmers markets or something like that, that they do at all of their sites, to sort of get us all on the same page to understand where they're coming from also. So I think, you know, that we seemingly seem to be in a better place from an understanding each other. And hopefully, yeah, we see some sort of updates or commitments at the next meeting.
Yeah, one thing I might just add that Greg touched upon was, and Matt, I might invite John to the next meeting, because he was very versed on the type of things you're trying to do with all your complexes. So he brought a lot to my eye as to like what's going to be happening and how you're going to try to pull in the public along with that. So I think just having people hear that will talk about the community, us versus them type of mentality, and how that all meshes together. So, but Greg summed it up pretty well. Very well. I'm a lot more comfortable with the blend than I was prior to the meeting.
Okay. But a little more work to do. Are you gonna have another subcommittee hearing before we come back, or are we just gonna come back in 2 weeks?
We might, we'll see how far we go. Might be.
I mean, we might have to, if they start, you know, putting some design together or whatever, want to look at it before it comes back. So we'll see what they want. I'm available if that's needed.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, so that was open, but they're coming up with options and then we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, well, just a reminder, of course, just work through Gail. Brian knows that, if we have to, if you're gonna schedule it, just so it gets noticed and all that good stuff. Okay. Sounds good. Anyone else have a comment or question before we move on?
Excited about the outdoor Wi-Fi and live in the outdoor space there, the public space.
Okay.
And the stuff that John talked about that he'll talk is that, they have public events. So meaning that, they have certain days or holiday thing that they advertise that the public is invited.
Brian, John will do a lot better job.
Okay. Chip. Is
Let's
that
keep moving.
a message to mute?
Yeah. All right, did we have any other topics to cover tonight, Brian? Okay.
Right, Matt?
Nothing for me.
All right, so next time, updates, garaging, landscape, we'll get hard copies and see if there's any comments from the board, O&M, and then an update on these amenities.
Reconciliation of the plans is still out there, Dave.
Reconciliation.
Yep.
Coordination with Concom if they do close out.
Yep, see if that affects any of the plans that we've seen to date. Yeah, okay. Okay.
And then Dave, I'm sorry, I missed it, just the coordination between the O&M, the conditions and the drainage plan too. Some way to simplify memorializing all those benefits in a way that you don't have to read through six plans to make sense of.
Sound good, Brian?
Yep.
And Matt? Okay. All right, board members, if there's nothing else for now, we'll open up a public testimony. If anyone has a comment or question about the information we've heard tonight, please raise your hand and we'll entertain that at this time. Okay, the first hand I see is Dennis Clardy. Mr. Clardy, please unmute yourself. State your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, David. My name is Dennis Clardy. I live at 1 Harvest Road. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I know it's difficult that you're building in what was a former river estuary, and that the lake appears to be elevated. But our properties are connected by water. And I was just wondering, the south culvert where you say it drains to the lake. Well, actually, I believe that it does not drain to the lake. And the water is apparently going towards the Reading Drainage Canal. But I'm just wondering, I know that you probably would like it to drain to the lake, but are you amenable, is the applicant amenable to removing the material that was reported to have been plowed into the culvert?
There's the culvert that is separates 100 quantipound and 200 quantipound. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, Matt.
To the extent that there's material on our property that is blocking the culvert, as part of the Conservation Commission process, I think we're going to be required to remove that anyways. And removing sediment buildup is not a concern. I think the issue really is that when we were talking about this, when we were looking at this on site, most of the sediment buildup was actually on the town-owned property on the other side of that culvert. So, you know, to the extent that we can clear out the culvert on our side, yeah, that's absolutely fine. We wouldn't be doing any dredging or anything, you know, obviously that's a protected area and we're not trying to disturb that wetland. But we're happy to the extent that there's buildup, we're definitely happy to do that maintenance.
Yeah, but the problem with the elevated lake level is that water would drain, that would become a second outlet to drain into the Reading Drainage Canal. So you really have to perhaps seek the normal level of the lake. And if that river could drain into the lake, it would really help to turn over the water and do a lot to improve the quality, water quality. But I believe this would involve cooperation with the town. And it is a problem because we are connected by water, our properties are connected by water.
Yeah. I think I can say this, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Clardy, you know, the town engineer is reviewing this project from a drainage perspective. He's already chimed in. You know, whatever he has requested us to do, we're doing. And we're working with conservation for what they've requested. So I think if these are concerns, and Mr. Clardy had mentioned cooperation from the town, I think you should really approach the town engineer and have a discussion with him. As Mr. D'Amico has said, we're open, as we have been from day one, to do whatever we can to help out any circumstances out there.
But if it doesn't happen, Brian, the other option is that the water connection will flow towards my house. So
Yeah,
to a lesser extent than to a certainly lesser extent than it does today. So what we're doing is you know, intrinsically an improvement versus the existing conditions. Yeah, I think something that's important to note here, and I think it's important to pursue. The Conservation Commission is interested in kind of looking at this holistically. There's a bunch of different parties involved, most specifically the town of Reading, and how they regulate their water levels. That as part of this conversation, I would say to the extent that this project is even involved or this property is even involved in this issue is a less than 1% extent. But you know, we are more than happy to try to drive that conversation and try to help out there. As I always have, I've understood your concern, but trying to decouple this from the project, saying is that what we're providing here is an improvement.
And Matt, I just want to make this very clear, is that there is no water draining into the south culvert that connects to the lake. That's correct, yes?
I can't say I'm qualified to speak on that.
Well, you were there. I had brought you around and I showed it to you.
I think it also depends on the time of the year and the height of the water level of the lake and where the groundwater is at as well.
Okay, well, we can.
like I said, Mr. Chair, I think it's really, Mr. Clardy needs to address it to the town engineer. We're not qualified to have a debate here tonight on drainage. We're not drainage
The
experts.
water level, according to the town engineer, is 187.54 on the Wakefield side of the culvert. On the
Mr. Chairman, this isn't really before us, in my mind. And again, I agree with that. We're not qualified to have this debate. So I think it has to happen with the Conservation Commission and with the town engineer. I want to be sympathetic to Mr. Clardy and his concerns, but he's got to be in the right forum with the right qualified people to have this dialogue.
but you said your drainage report said that the water drains through that culvert into the lake, but clearly it doesn't. And the board is willing to accept something they know is.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, just to be straightforward, Mr. Clardy, are you a hydrologist or are you a certified engineer?
Well, I am relying upon.
Are you an engineer, Mr. Clardy?
I am relying upon.
I asked you a question. Are you an engineer?
I am relying upon an engineer.
Well, you're not, and you're speaking like you have knowledge like an engineer. This project's been reviewed by our engineering team more than once been reviewed by the town engineer, and it's being reviewed by the Conservation Commission with very qualified people. So that's our response, Mr. Chair.
Understood.
Mr. Chair, I would also argue that with all due respect for Mr. Clardy, we asked that conversations take place with anything that was discussed this evening. We never discussed drainage. We spent months on drainage at the beginning of the project. So this is just not the right timing for this.
And not the right forum if again, it sounds like there are many other parties potentially involved in this area beyond this site and what they're planning to do. And as Matt said, what they're proposing to do in their site will make the current situation better. So with that, Mr. Clardy, I will ask that we take this offline. If you want to schedule some time with the town engineer, or visit the Concom at their hearing, get a better understanding from their perspective, but I'm just not sure we can do anything more with it tonight.
Okay, thank you for your time. and I
Okay.
appreciate
Yep. All right, anyone else have a comment or question? All right, seeing none, we'll close it to public testimony for the evening. So 2 weeks, Brian, we'll be ready to recircle back on some of these things.
Yes, please.
Okay. Motion's in order.
Hey, Dave, I have one question before I make the motion. At some point, we've discussed ad nauseum many of these points. At some point, could we just close the public conversation and just tie up our loose ends and move forward?
That is certainly in our purview if we thought we were at that point, but there's a hindrance to doing that, right, Brian? I know we've talked about this with other projects that say we think we're done and we close it, and then we're trying to button things up and we realize that we need to have some conversation, and then we've closed the public hearing. So it hamstrings us a little bit. So
okay,
I hear what you're saying, but we really want to do it only when we feel like we're really at the end and we're done.
Okay,
yeah,
no problem. Just curious.
And it sounds like
I move that we continue this for another 2 weeks.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, that's unanimous. Thank you for your time and updates tonight. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next continued hearing, moving right along. 22-39, 0 North Ave Wakefield LLC at 596 North Avenue.
Mr. Chair, I gotta go on timeout.
Yep, you're going to timeout right now.
And don't forget about me this time.
Nope. I went to bring him back and something changed in the participant list and like it flopped around. I ended up sending Jim to timeout.
yeah.
We got you back. Yeah.
For the best.
Yeah. All right. So, Mr.
I'm
Pride.
not sure that was accidental.
So for the record, Mr. Pride is recused himself from this hearing. So he is now in the waiting room, no longer part of this public hearing in Zoom. So Jesse, you with us?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Jesse Schomer representing the applicant 0 North Ave Wakefield LLC. Also here tonight, Mr. Chair, is Scott Thornton from Vanassen Associates. He's here with the intent to discuss the traffic study that his firm prepared with respect to this project, and also to update the board members with respect to our meeting with the Traffic Advisory Committee, which was back on April the 29th, I believe it was. In addition, since we were last before the board, we had an initial subcommittee meeting with Mr. McBain as well as Mr. Lucy, and it was a productive first meeting regarding site planning issues, the massing of the building and its location, and the orientation of the parking areas. We had a productive conversation, first conversation of which there will be others, We anticipate the next meeting, hopefully we can get that scheduled for next week. We're still trying to line up the conservation agents as well as our engineer, because the primary issues of the site relate directly to the location of the wetlands and how those impact the development. So we need to tie those issues down before we make any further progress on the remaining issues, of which there are many. But we thought we would come before you tonight and make good use of the time in the 180-day period to make some progress with respect to the traffic. Since the plans that we're throwing around in the subcommittee hearing are basically the similar or the same parking count, unit count, bedroom count that we have previously proposed to the board. So we're not anticipating significant changes on those fronts. And in that light, the traffic study that has been prepared by Vanass previously for the 38 unit original project would still hold value in terms of the evidence that it provides for the board regarding the traffic impact. Unless there are questions for me or any other administrative matters that the board members would like to discuss before we get into the meat of tonight's presentation, I would like to turn it over to Scott Thornton, but I'll pause there in case there are any other issues.
Well, I would just add to your comments, Jesse, thank you for the intro, that we have confirmed a partnership again with MHP. Ezra Glenn is a consultant, has been brought on board. He's in the meeting tonight, and he will participate in those subcommittee hearings. So I know he's part of the conversation to get that next meeting scheduled. So we're welcome to, happy to have Ezra back. He helped us a lot with the Crescent Street project earlier this year and last year. So welcome, Ezra. I see him in the room here, but just want to note that.
Thanks.
Yep. Hey, there
Happy
he
to
is.
be here.
Hey, thank you. Welcome back. So yeah, again, to the extent that traffic information, I think still has some value and relevance. Why don't we go through that with Mr. Thornton, and then we'll see where we go from there. Again, if there's some adjustments that are made to the site and the project that we need to revisit, obviously that would happen and go through TAC, maybe another update. But let's hear what we have for tonight, I think, and make some progress if we can.
Sounds good. And welcome to the fray, Ezra. Nice to see you again. Ezra and I have worked together on a previous project, and I know we'll all benefit greatly from his expertise. So glad to have you on board. Scott, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you to go through your traffic report.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jesse. And for the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Scott Thornton. I'm with Vanessa and Associates, and we prepared the traffic study for the project. And there wasn't, with a smaller project like this, we're not looking at a lot of impacts. Certainly, nothing has changed since I presented the traffic study, I think in March 9th, at a previous meeting. So what I thought, as Jesse had alluded to, what I thought I'd do is just bring you up to speed with regard to the TAC meeting that we had on the 29th of April. And in terms of that meeting, it was pretty well attended. TAC's consultant, Matt Keeley from VHB, was there. He indicated he had no issues with the traffic study that was prepared for the project. He had a couple questions on site distance and visitor parking. Chief Sullivan from the fire department had a comment regarding I think the power lines over the driveway, making sure that there was sufficient clearance, which our site engineer is verifying. Lieutenant Anderson from the police department had some comments, again, related to visitor parking, for spaces for electric vehicle chargers, and possibly reserving some space for delivery vehicles with some signage indicating an area for those vehicles on site. Town engineer Bill Renault had some comments similar to what we had discussed, what he and I had discussed previously, and that he was looking for the applicant to contribute to a push button pedestrian flash or an RFB device on North Ave to aid in pedestrian crossings of North Ave, particularly given given the three apartment buildings, the two north of us on North Ave and our project, looking for a way for those pedestrians that want to get across to the east side of North Ave, where the sidewalk extends all the way up to places to the north and over to the lake. And that would be one device to do it. From our side, as far as some of the changes and some of the items that we're continuing to look at, the applicant's looking to unbundle the parking charges from rent, so that parking would be a separate cost from rent. This is done in a lot of towns and cities and encourages people without cars to look at this type of building, and also, gives people an idea of the costs of vehicle ownership. Another option is to manage the parking demand to make sure that each unit has at least one parking space. The other spaces would be leased on a first come, first served basis, but with priority given to the 2 and 3 bedroom units. And if we do that, we think that we can provide a few spaces for visitor parking, but it's something that we're continuing to review and look at options for parking and sort of revising the parking situation. In terms of future steps with the TAC, we'll be looking. I did reach out to Matt from VHB to get an idea on the timing for his comments. I have yet to hear back from him, but Lieutenant Anderson mentioned that we would be on their May agenda for a follow-up meeting. And in terms of the traffic study itself, what we had looked at before was a minor impact due to the project, something like 0.3 to 0.6% increases to the peak hour traffic due to our project. Adding the sidewalk on North Ave is a benefit and an amenity. And again, if it connects to sidewalks with those other two buildings, you'll have a good stretch of sidewalk on the west side of North Ave. And I think that's really about it for the traffic updates. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Scott, board members, any comments, questions at this time?
Yeah, I got a quick question. Just wanted to make it so I heard it clear. You're going to be charging for all parking on the site?
Yeah, the idea is, and it's still something that we're looking at, but the idea is that you wouldn't have a parking space included with your rent. It would be a separate charge. So, it'd probably be similar to other units or other complexes where, where that cost would be similar to what they have if the parking space is included. But what it does is it allows people that don't have vehicles to look at the site and not have to, because they don't have cars, they're able to get in there for less.
Would there be consideration given to those renting the affordable units in terms of the pricing for those spots?
And I think that's one of the things that has to be reviewed, is how that compares or how that aligns with the affordable housing component.
I might say that this whole concept scares me to the bitter end. Because if we're talking about keeping cars out of neighborhoods, if I'm a renter, I'm just going to park at a street across the street and not pay for parking. Why do I have to pay for it? I'll just go park where I'm allowed to in the neighborhood. None of this plan sounds good to me. I have to tell you, I maybe the extra, but I think there's a certain amount of space that has to come with every unit. So that's where I stand.
So Chip, that's kind of where I was going with my questions, is that I was okay with the parking ratios as they were presented, given the number of units and the number of spots. So that seemed okay to me. but I was unaware that they were gonna be charging for those spaces. So I do think, because I think, given the site location, like the visitor parking on the weekends and stuff, I think people are gonna go across the street and use the office park or next door and use the KFC, right? So I wasn't so worried about spillover into the neighborhoods, given that situation. But to your point, if they're gonna be charged, if I don't have to pay for a spot, I'll go around, I'll walk a half a block, right? So.
Yeah,
Part
and
of
we have-
affordability, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
We have, I mean, if Jesse remembers, we dealt with this with Tarrant Lane also, and we have direct experience with, a place that basically tried to do the same concept. I can't remember what's the complex that's right next to Tarrant Lane? Is that Vista
Wakefield.
or is that Vista?
It was
That one?
Old Vista. I think it's changed its name.
Okay, so that one, and it was, maybe the thought process was the same. I don't even know how long ago that was permitted, but maybe the thought process was the same at the time. And they were supposed to pay for parking and no one did. They parked out on the street.
They still do.
They still do. So this isn't an area. I guess that's where I'll leave it. We dealt with this on Tarrant Lane. I forget exactly where we ended up. On one project, I think we ended up at least one space per unit. And then maybe they could rent out of the space, but I don't remember if that was Tarrant Lane.
No, that was down on Foundry.
Oh, that was Foundry.
It's also in Tarrant, because to your point about the building up, the project up the way, they were charging for the garage, basically, and everybody else ended up on the lane, just narrowing it down. And it just didn't work.
And out on the main road. They're out on Hopkins too, so.
And I can see that what's gonna happen, people are gonna go in the office park. Look at all that parking. Let's go over there. Really?
Isn't that the nature of affordability, equitability? I mean, if you're living in an affordable house, odds are you don't want to pay $300 a month for parking. So you're not, or you're being penalized because you have to. I just don't get how any of that works, even at the state level or any of this at all. And I think you kind of know it.
I think the intent with that, Mr. Feely, is to provide equitable treatment for the market rate and the affordable units. So we have to treat them equally, whether we of course we want to. The idea is to provide an ample amount of parking spaces for the site, and given its proximity to the other multifamily housing projects, which are all contributing in some fashion to some sort of public transport option, whether that be a bus station or a shuttle bus. I understand there's some thought of that to provide access to the commuter rail station. Part of what we're trying to do with this site is to encourage non-auto dependency, and that we take that seriously. And I think it's important for a site like this, particularly given the amount of traffic which is in the area. And we've heard a lot of comments from neighbors on this project, on the Tarrant Lane project, I'm sure you've heard it on the Lake Q project across the way, is traffic. It's a major concern of everybody. And every traffic study that comes before you, every engineer like Scott, they say that traffic's not an issue, but each project adds more and more and more. So we're adding drips and drops here and there, and it adds up to a bucket.
So Jesse, what I would counter that with is, if you're going to charge parking to try to, create an incentive not to take a car, you have to have a parking and traffic demand management program.
Absolutely.
With shuttles, with subsidized T-passes, with a whole range of things that allows those folks, with like a bike room, and you've got to provide a whole series of amenities and programs that give folks that option. To just limit the parking, in my mind, doesn't accomplish it. It creates an incentive for people to go park in the neighborhood streets. So if that's going to be your strategy of charging for parking, I'd like to see what parking and traffic demand management program you have in place that gives tenants real options not to have a car there? Are you gonna provide a zip car spot, or, what are you doing, with T-passes and bike rooms, like I said? So it can't be a standalone. Let's, create these incentives for folks not to bring a car here. I guess the point I'm making.
I agree with you 100%, Mr. Lucy, and a traffic demand management plan is critical to this succeeding, as well as bike accommodations and all those things that you mentioned. So that'll be forthcoming as the project moves forward.
And I'll just add, I know someone that lives at one of those other properties up the street. It's got to have designated visitor parking. You can't have people visiting the site and just assume they're going to park across the street or park in the KFC or park on the side street, the neighborhood streets. There has to be at least a couple of designated parking spots for visitors. I just can't feel that, I've used them at the abutting properties. Sometimes they're both full and I've had to go across the street, but they're at least provided some on-site designated visitor parking. Don't just include them in the calculation. I think there needs to be designated visitor, at least a couple. Okay, so please take that into consideration. I saw Ezra's hand was up. Ezra, would you like to add something, sir?
Sure. I was mostly, I think you guys are right on target here. I think the question of whether you want to charge for parking or not is certainly one the board should weigh in on and decide. There are arguments in favor, arguments against. I think you're framing that nicely. The concern about the effects on affordable housing is also a really good one, but I think you can probably just sort of put that off and say that's what the subsidizing agency needs to deal with. If the applicant does wind up charging for parking, the subsidizing agency will still ensure that it is affordable for affordable units. I'm glad to see you're concerned about it, but I think there's another check later for that. So you should feel free to either say you want them to charge for parking or you don't want them to charge for parking based on your assessment of the effects on the neighborhood and all that, and trust that the affordable units will still be equitably treated, I guess is what I want to say. So.
Got it. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and nice to see you care about that. But
we're trying. If we do enough of these, try to from project to project. Okay.
Yeah. The only other thought I had, and I apologize for coming in late on this. I know you've already started the project. I just wanted to note a lot of these points were also made way back in July in the town's comment letter, which is nice to see. Not about the parking in particular, but about the need for improvements to the sidewalks, for bike facilities, and think about emergency access. I just wanted to be sure you're expecting some kind of, it's great to have Scott report what came up at the TAC. I assume this would be sort of followed up with some report from them stating their belief.
Yes.
Just because that's always good to sort of, if it were a peer reviewer, we'd want that. If it's another town official, we'd want that. So.
No, it's our TAC that includes
Fire,
VHP.
police. Yeah.
Yeah. But it includes their input, and they're either going to send us a report, which they always do, or they're waiting for this follow-up meeting maybe to conclude their thoughts and make a recommendation. So
Perfect.
We definitely will hear from them. When we do, sometimes we invite them to come to the meeting in case there's board member comments or public comments. So there'll definitely be a little more coverage on it, I think, after we hear back from them.
Super.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, Mr. Chair, when we were before the TAC, we did make the point that Ezra's making that it's critical to have a letter with their points. And I believe that they are waiting until after the final meeting that they have with us to memorialize everything in writing.
Okay. All right. Thank you for confirming. Yep. So we'll look for that.
And just one more point, if I may, on the point that you just made, Mr. Chair, of guest parking, that was raised by a number of members of the TAC. So that I have no doubt that will be reflected in future plans. We understand, we're hearing you loud and clear that that's what everybody wants to see. So that's what we'll be doing.
Yep. Okay, sounds good. Any other comments, questions, board members? Again, sounds like we're going to circle back on this one once we hear from TAC. But for now, sounds like we're good. All right. Was there anything else, Jesse, or that was the main topic for the evening in terms of updates?
That's all we have, unless Mr. McBain or Mr. Lucy would like to talk further about the first subcommittee hearing. I'll leave that up to them.
No, other than you're correct, and it was a good meeting. It got us in a starting position, and which is basically starting with a massing on the site and the parking before we get to any other thing. And at this point, we'll probably have it 2 more meetings basically on this one topic alone. It just doesn't make sense to go anything beyond that until we understand where COMCOM comes from and how we might allocate the buildings on the site to mitigate their appearance.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Tom, anything to add at this
I
time?
agree. It was a good meeting. Appreciated it. So,
As did we. They're very helpful.
All right. So we'll look for further updates from the subcommittee as they progress. Again, you'll let us know when you feel like you have something to bring back to the full board and public hearing here, and other members of the public. Until then, we'll look for that to continue. Anything else, board members? All right, at this time, we'll open up the public. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Was there another board comment?
Just, no, it's Ezra. If
Hi.
I can jump in. Just one question, just to clarify, I know, it sounds like we're right on track here, and I understand, the next steps, but is there any desire to queue up peer review for stormwater and site engineering, or is that normally covered in the subcommittee or the Concom, or just because that could take a little while to get a peer reviewer on if you wanted that?
Well, our engineering department, correct me if I'm wrong, board members, but I think our town engineering department looks at the stormwater plan
They'll do that, okay.
on all of these.
Just so
yeah.
long as they're not feeling overburdened, or, because you
No,
have the
no,
right
I
to
think-
ask for that.
Yeah, I don't know that we've received correspondence of the files here, I guess, without pouring through it right here at live, but if they haven't already, they would typically write us a letter and say, we reviewed the report and they had these comments, and the applicant would have an opportunity to respond and clarify anything, and update their plan if need be, so.
Sounds great. If it's
So-
like my other experience, I think you've got great town officials who are responsive, but I just wanted to be sure we knew, so good,
Understood. I appreciate the reminder. Yep.
thanks.
All right. So public testimony. If anyone has a comment or question, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. We'll entertain that at this time. Again, it was limited topics tonight, mainly on traffic, obviously. So that's where we would want to limit the discussion. There'll be other opportunities at future meetings for other comments. Seeing no hands, we'll close it to public testimony for the evening. So just I assume we want to continue for 2 weeks in case there are some updates to be had, and then we'll see where we are at that time.
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Chair. I'll be before you on another matter that evening anyway. So if we don't have anything further to present, I will just request a continuance and push it out into June.
Okay.
If that's agreeable to the board.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it doesn't sound like we have any direct thing to talk about until the subcommittee comes back with their thoughts. So to me, as long as you're willing, like, to just spin our wheels and listen to ourselves doesn't make a lot of sense. So as long as you're willing to continue, if there's nothing really relevant or that can't wait for another 2 weeks after that, that's fine with me to continue it for 2.
Yeah, you all have obviously very busy agendas, so we won't take up time if there's nothing to discuss. I like hearing the sound of my voice, but not that much.
No, if it looks like that's where it's going, just send us a letter and we'll take it up at the beginning of the meeting and everyone will know it's continued. So
Very
no
good.
big deal, no big deal, but I'd like to keep it on there in case something does come up, because if we do put it out 4 weeks and something comes up, now you're not on our agenda, and people haven't been noticed about it, even though it's a continued matter, but they wouldn't think it's on the agenda. So if they saw it posted. Okay,
So I
with
move
that,
that we continue this for 2 weeks.
second,
any discussion? Regular voting members, then Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are continued. We bring Joe back from timeout. All right, thank you, Jesse and Scott, for your updates tonight. We'll talk in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks so much.
Joe, you back with us?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back. All right, we're on to new hearings, which we have 2. First one, 22-56 and 57. Eugene Kaminsky and Ava Ostrovsky Kaminsky at 11 Andrews Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing the Kaminskys on their proposed project at 11 Andrews Road. At least Eugene is on here with us. Hi, Gene, how are you? And he is the owner with Ava.
I'm well, thank you.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
He's the owner of the property with Ava at 11 Andrews Road, and also dialed in is Wayne Perkins. He's our design contractor who drew the architectural plans that we're going to see tonight. As I've mentioned, this is involves 11 Andrews Road in Wakefield in the Montrose section of town. The Kaminsky's desire to put an addition onto their dwelling in the form of an attached garage with a temporarily with an empty space for storage above, with the goal of at some point when finances allow, with all of the supply chain issues, et cetera, to convert that into bedroom space. And we think the project fits into the neighborhood. I think probably the best place to start would be to kind of give you a little Google tour. Can you see that screen?
Yes.
This is somewhat of a dated picture of the Kaminsky's house, but it really hasn't changed structurally at all. As you can see, they have a driveway here. And this is kind of unique because it's Andrews Road, which I'm going to show across the street. In this picture is a kind of a cape, which has been either raised or significantly modified. This Google is not to date on that. I'll show you that as we go on tonight, but it's a much larger structure at this point. But this is kind of a unique neighborhood because it was the old Andrews Road that ended, and then it went into the Montrose Wood subdivision, which you can see, this is where kind of the new street begins. And now all of these, extremely large homes are built in Montrose, a beautiful neighborhood, one of my favorite neighborhoods in town. But Andrews Road kind of became an entrance of this. And what's happening now in this portion of Andrews Road coming in, a lot of folks are trying to add on to their houses or put a second story on or just reconstruct them to fit in. So that kind of gives you an idea of the structure the way it is now. I'm going to try to bring up Wayne's plans to show you architecturally what the Kaminsky's desire to do. Gotta flip these. Pretty basic addition. What they desire to do is to put, as I mentioned, on the left side of the house where the driveway currently is a attached two-car garage with a proposed addition above. It will fit nicely with the house. You'll see in a minute, it's a little bit stepped back right here from the existing house. This is the back of the existing house. They have a built-in pool in the backyard, which I'll show you some photos, and this would be the back of the garage. And these are Wayne's detailed framing plans, which I don't think are really relevant, but they were part of the package. And this is the floor plan. You can see it's important for it to be on this side of the house because it's an attached garage. It will go into the existing kitchen, which is the layout that everybody wants. And then up above, as I mentioned, storage area, future bedroom above garage. So that gives the board just an idea of what we're looking to do. As far as the site plan goes, let me find that. So this is the site plan that was prepared by Hayes Engineering, stamped site plan. This shows the proposed dwelling kind of right in the middle of the lot. You can kind of see how the lot narrows as it goes back. It's only 65 feet in the back, but it meets the current 100-yard requirement and the current 12,000 square foot requirement. But there's some limitations on the shape of the lot because of how it narrows. Going back, and I mentioned there's a pool here. There's some significant topography issues in the back, which I'll get into. And I'm gonna come back to this because we'll go over the zoning table, but I'm gonna kind of table that for a minute, if I may. Let me find So this is going to show you some pictures. This is the house that's now across the street. I showed you that little cave. This is a pretty, can you see that adequately? It's hard for me to show photos. I got to kind of bring up this. I think you can see that, right?
Yes.
Great. So that's, very beautiful home across the street, very significant. They've kind of done what the Kaminsky's want to do. They've added a nice garage with a room above. Wanted to show, so this is kind of from the back of the house facing out to that house. This is a driveway. This is the area here where the proposed garage will go.
We're not seeing it, Brian.
Oh, hold on. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. There you go.
Okay.
That's the current driveway, which will pretty much stay the same, and the garage will be in this area where the grass is connected to the house. Okay. This is kind of from looking from where the back of the garage would be into the backyard, which is the pool area. Built-in pool. And I want to point out, because you can see the topography issues of this lot. It falls off, it goes up in the back. This is town-owned land behind, significant piece of town-owned land, a lot of wetlands back there. So there certainly is, I'll get into it, are some unique circumstances to this and challenging it. With the topography, there's not a lot that you can do in the back. Just want to show you one more picture. This is how it goes up pretty significantly, a lot of trees, and this fence delineation with the wall, as I've mentioned, it's town-owned land from behind. So I'm going to go back to the site plan. If I can find it, just bear with me. Okay. So as I mentioned, there's also a little proposed addition in the front, which is by right. That's actually under construction because with the front yard setback, it meets the front yard setback requirement. So if you drove by the house today, the contractor's doing that because no matter what, the Kaminsky's are going to do that. It's kind of just a nice feature that they're adding on to the front of the house. So when we look at our zoning table, first is the front yard setback requirement is 20 feet in this district, as the board is aware. It's currently 27.4. What's proposed is 22.6. It will be in full compliance. The side yard setback is where we run into an issue because the house is centered on this lot. There's really no option either way. There's going to be an encroachment to put the garage on. So obviously this is the preferable side because as I mentioned, it matches up with the interior kitchen. It's where the current driveway is. We don't have to lose trees on the other side or it just fits better in that area. So the requirement is 15 feet, currently 19.4, and we're asking to go to 6.5. It's really the way this lot narrows, it's 8.7 in the front, but it narrows down to 6.5, as I had mentioned that. The rear yard setback, 25 feet, 53 is provided. We're maintaining that. Lot frontage is 100. Minimum lot width is 100 required. It's currently 92.33. It's going to get a little worse to 90.5. And the reason is because the way the lot narrows and it's measured through the principal structure. There's a little addition going on the back here too, which is in full compliance for setbacks, but that affects the lot width. And that's part of the reason we've also asked for a finding in addition to the variance on this. Minimum lot width, it's 12,000 square feet. It meets the requirements, meets the shape of the lot requirement. Maximum building coverage is easily met in both existing and proposed conditions. And minimum open area way exceeds it. Minimum requirement is 40%, currently at 81, it will be 73 after the construction of the addition if it's approved.
Brian, what's the date of the plan you're looking at? The one that came with the application doesn't have that last.
Yeah,
word.
I had, what I did is today, thank you, Mr. Chair, I was updated today to May 11th because
Okay.
I had noticed in preparation that Hayes did not reference what the minimum open area requirement was. And, you know, they said, oh, it meets it easy. And I said, I think the board's going to want to see that on the plan. So I had them put that on.
And Brian, would you remind me why we're looking for a finding why?
Because it doesn't meet the current minimum lot requirement. Okay, because.
Less than 12,000?
Well, I'm sorry, Chip, the minimum lot width requirement, I meant to say. Minimum lot width is 100 feet. It has to be 100 feet all the way through the principal residence at every
Right.
point.
So the finding is okay,
Yeah, so we're
that's
putting
fine.
this addition on.
because that's already non-conforming.
It's not, yeah, and we're actually extending that. We're intensifying that.
Right.
So.
Okay.
So we need a finding to do that. We're intensifying that nonconformity.
And then the variance for the side lot. setback.
Correct. Yep. Okay, and I get one more thing I'd like to show you, if I could.
And in that case, we would need to find both prongs, that they're intensifying
Yeah.
and that we
And
would find that it's not
detrimental.
substantially more detrimental. So
Correct.
this is where both prongs would have to be found.
Yeah.
But
If we were to do that.
Yep. But that's what they're asking for. So.
Okay, this is the last screen. I can't believe I've been able to navigate my way through this, but this is the GIS map. I just kind of wanted to familiarize the board. If this addition is put on, as you know, in footnote 10, you're required to have 20 feet distance between dwellings. We're not looking for relief on that. This house is set back. Wayne Perkins looked at that today. I had Hayes look at it also. It will maintain more than 20 feet between the dwellings, even with the addition as constructed. As I've mentioned, town-owned land back here, there's wetlands, so there's no back. We do have a letter of support that I'm going to bring up on the screen from the owner of 15, the neighbor who's would be most impacted, supporting the proposal and asking the board to grant the relief. We have support from the folks at 7, even though they're on the opposite side. We have support from the folks at 10 across the street, and also 14. So we've got 7, 10, 14, and 15 who are supporting the project.
You've attained them since the application, because we don't have
Yes,
those.
I'm going to share that. I'm going to email that to you, Mr. Chair, for the record
Okay.
tonight. Okay, let me share that. You can read that if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay, so now, you know, I kind of showed you the project. I've shown you relief. I've shown you some unique aspects of the project. I'd like to talk to you about the variance standards and why I think that this variance is justified. So as the board knows, you need to have unusual circumstances relating to a lot for variance. I think this property meets it in it can either be related to soil shape, topography, or structures. So I think as far as shape goes, I already touched on that. The lot narrows as it goes in from the front to the back. It's only 65 feet in the back. It's 100 feet in the front. The second aspect of unusual circumstances is topography. There's topography in the back, up and sides, and then the final thing is structures can be considered. And you have to consider that when this structure was built, it was put right in the middle of the lot. So it really didn't give a lot of wiggle room for a garage. It could have been offset, but it wasn't, and that's the circumstance today. So I think there are some unusual circumstances. The next is there has to be a hardship, and it must relate to the premises for which the variance is sought. I think it's important to note that a garage is allowed by right. And there's no other place that they can put the garage. There's no opportunity, as the board knows, you can have a attached garage by right in the rear yard. And you can actually get benefit of a 7.5-foot setback from both the side yard and the rear yard if it's an attached garage in the rear of your property. They don't have an opportunity to do this because of their topography. And there's a pool in the backyard. It's an existing structure circumstance. So they really have no other location where they could reasonably locate the garage, which is because of the unusual circumstances. So there is a nexus between the unusual circumstances in the hardship. The final aspect of the variance is that the board has to find that there's no substantial detriment to the public good. And I think certainly that there's no substantial detriment. As I've mentioned, all the direct abutters have supported this. As far as other, unusual circumstances and hardship, I mentioned at the beginning of this that, this road serves as a gateway to, a more significant development, for lack of a better way of saying it, multi-million-dollar homes. And basically, this isn't, as you can see, the folks that have bought on this gateway in are trying to kind of keep up with the neighbors, if you will. And I think it's going to be more appropriate, and it's going to fit with everything else that is built further on in that newer subdivision. So I think the Kaminsky's have really done their homework on this. They've spent time with the neighbors. They've given a lot of thought to this project, and I do think the standards of a variance are there if the board elects to grant the variance. As far as the finding goes, I think, that's speaks for itself. I don't think it's what's being proposed as far as the lot width is concerned is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what is there today. So I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair, the board might have.
Board members?
Can we see those letters, or at least see the letter from?
Oh, I thought I brought it up. Didn't I do that?
You did.
The signatures, yeah.
Hold on, Chip.
I don't think it was a letter, it was just one of our signatures.
Yeah, signatures, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it's important that it says they actually reviewed the plans, because I think we've seen these letters before that, yeah, they talked to me about it, and then they come to the meeting and say, yeah, but I didn't see the plan. And it ends up biting them in the proverbial rear end. So yeah, I think it's important to note that they said they actually reviewed the plan, so they see what they're trying to do, and they just didn't try to describe it, and wave a hand. So I think it's important to note that. Yeah, I mean, I have no problem, it seems reasonable to want to add a garage, certainly. And if we were going to add one, I'd probably want to add a 2-car garage too. But of course, if this is a 1-car, you probably would need the variance. If it was a 15-foot wide garage, it would meet the side setback. But it's their option to try to propose something of this size and request a variance. I assume they thought of that. The other thing, note on the plan, it says woodshed, no foundation to be moved. Duly noted. Hopefully it's being moved at least 7.5 feet from the property line. Otherwise they'd need a variance for that. I know it's existing, but if they're going to move it as noted, hopefully it moves far enough away from the lot line that it meets the accessory setback of 7.5 feet. It doesn't show where it's going to go, but I would just note that for the record for them and you. It should be moved to meet otherwise you'd need to come back for another variance. And I don't think you want to do that. Those are and I would say we did receive correspondence. Concom, not in their jurisdiction. Town engineer just wondered about bedrooms in that development and I&I fees, but sounds like bedrooms might come later. Fire department, just making sure, of course, building codes with hardwired smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, otherwise no objections. So just for the record, we did hear from a few other town agencies on this one. Other board members, comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm fine with it too, Dave. I think it's gonna fit into the neighborhood just fine, so.
Anyone else? If not, I can open it up to public testimony. If anyone has a comment or question from the public, please raise your hand in the Zoom call. I'll entertain that at this time. Seeing no hands being raised or anyone waving, we'll close with the public testimony.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to find first and vary second, or vary first and find second? We should probably find and then grant the variance, right? Find that it's not more detrimental and that we can continue the nonconformity, and then give them the variance for the footage on the side. Probably doesn't matter what order.
At the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter, as long as we do both and they both have a similar outcome.
Been there before. So in that sense, Mr. Chairman, I move that we find that in the plans presented by Hayes, that the nonconformity of not 100 feet through the middle of the lot can continue to be non-conforming, and that is not more detrimental than currently is to the neighborhood.
Okay,
I'll second it.
thank you, Tom. Any discussion on the motion? All right, voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
Jim,
yes,
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so that's unanimous.
I move that we grant a variance for the side yard setback according to the plans presented to us this evening by Hayes Engineering dated 5/11/22, and that it goes to 6.5 feet plus or minus as necessary to build the structure as represented to us this evening. And that we reviewed the criteria for a variance and the standards for a variance, and found that between topography, shape of the land, the current structure, kind of all things together, that this would be the reason to grant a variance, and that this variance would also not make it more detrimental to the neighborhood.
I'll second.
Just thinking, under discussion, are there any, other than the usual conditions of, they'll build it according to the plans, but I didn't hear anything that we necessarily need to take into consideration just before we vote. Anyone think of any conditions that we would need to apply specifically?
Do you want to apply, Dave, that they're, or, I mean, they'll have to come back anyways, that, what was it, shed moves further than the setbacks?
We could, Brian, is that a viable condition in your mind? Just, it's noted on the plan, but it doesn't show where it's going.
Yeah, Gene, can you comment what you're gonna do with that shed for the board? Do you know what shed they're talking about, Gene? Okay, you gotta unmute.
Yes, obviously, I know. We removed a couple of trees, and the stumps are going to be ground soon, which are behind that shed. And as a result, we'll be able to move this shed literally about maybe 5 to 10 feet deeper. That's the only thing to do.
Yeah, what the board is saying, Gene, is that under the bylaw, the shed needs to be 7.5 feet off of the property line.
I don't think it's going to change that anyhow. It's just going to be little deeper into the property, into the backyard. That's
Yeah.
it's going to move.
How old is the shed, Gene?
As is.
How old is the shed?
We have grandfathered that, so I cannot tell.
How old is it?
Well, we bought the property in 2015.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
honestly have no clue how long has
Yeah.
it been there.
So I think the point is under the statute, it's a legal it's legal non-conforming now. So
Do we know it's legal? We know it's non-conforming.
it is legal because after under the statute now, if it's been there for 10 years, any structure on a property is now deemed to be legal non-conforming under state law. They changed that in 2016
Yeah, I guess, but other than he's been there since 2015 and it's been there before him, we don't have any evidence that it's been 10. It could have been put there 6 months before him.
I had a feeling you were gonna say that.
Yeah, it's simple math.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been significantly more than 6 months, I'm sure about that.
Yeah, I think I'll talk to Gene about this,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. We'll make sure we comply with the bylaw.
Okay. All right, so back to discussion. That was the only thought. Otherwise, I think we're good. Any other discussion? All right, same voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so that too is unanimous. Okay,
Thank you very much.
all right. Good luck to you, Mr. Kaminsky.
Thank you.
Score.
All right.
It's 90.
All right. Moving right along, the next new hearing, 22-58, George and Laura Cadaris at 28 Church Street.
Hello, excuse me. My name's Jay Henshaw. I represent the pool company, which is representing the Cadaris. What we're requesting here is a variance from the 10-foot side setback to allow for an above-ground pool to be, the water wall of the pool would be 6 feet from the side setback, a 6-foot side setback. The pool does have a cantilevered safety ledge and rail around it. That would be 4 feet from the side.
Do you have a plan that you can bring up just for the
I
benefit?
can't bring anything up. I came back in at the last minute. I was under the impression that you guys have been supplied with the plans.
Well, we have the application, but for the benefit of anyone on this call or the members of the public who haven't seen it, we like to try to show them in the hearing.
I appreciate that, but due to illness, I had to step in.
All right. Well, that's unfortunate for people of the public, but members, you have your application copy to reference. Okay, so I apologize for interrupting you there. I just, so if you want to continue, so we can see you want to put it in basically the side yard and near the lot lines.
Yes, it would be mostly, but not completely in the side lot, in the side yard. And it would be infringing on the side variance. So we're asking for basically 4 feet relief to the pool wall, which would be 6 feet off the sideline, and leaving the cantilevered ledge 4 feet off the sideline. There's been a shed removed to accommodate this. The pool has been scaled down in size to fit. Basically, the hardship here is that it's an undersized lot. The lot is just something under 5,000 square feet. Due to the topography of the back of the yard, even if we could fit it in there, because without a variance, it would be difficult because it's tiered there. So there's only one spot in this entire yard this structure could go. It is an above ground pool. It is basically a temporary structure. The property is in a highly trafficked area. It's on Church Street. It's about 4 houses in from the intersecting street, which is also a main street. So they have virtually no front yard that's usable. So this is really the only usable area of the property for them. The area is bounded by a privacy fence. And it really, it's that simple. The equipment package that comes with the pool is it's a very quiet system. It's a cartridge filter, rather small. It's a small pool, so it's a rather small system. Quiet, won't be a nuisance to the neighborhood at all. And really, it's that simple. There's not a lot to be pushing here. It just allows the property to be used in the spirit of a residential property, allowing the family to enjoy the property.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Board members, any comments or questions?
Do we have any support from the neighbors that they don't have a problem with this?
I have a letter dated May 9th, addressing it to Chairman McBain. I don't know, Jim, something's going on here.
Hey, take and run with it, Dave. Take it when you can get it.
Writing to support their application for variance. My wife and I are abutters located at 21 Lafayette Street. We don't
That's
believe
the
it would detract.
backyard.
That would be the backyard, yeah. They don't think it would detract from the neighborhood or the character, and they maintain a nice property. Don't foresee this location as an issue for them to maintain. We encourage the board to grant the variance. So
I don't know if it's, I
I'm
don't know
more
if it's,
concerned about the person on the right side, that this pool is
Yeah.
gonna be 4 foot from their property line and 6 feet or 8 feet in the, 6 feet in the air.
yeah, Jim, I mean, Chip, I don't know if
6 feet in the
21
air, 6 feet to the water wall. That safety ledge is only 4 feet in the air. It's not a high structure.
I don't know what the address is. This is the second house, and if you're coming up Church, traveling towards town, you have that one house where it's that triangle shaped lot that's facing you. And then this is the house right behind it. It's like one in from Lafayette as you're traveling from North Ave up towards either Main or Street there. So there's only one house to the right there, and it's perpendicular. So I don't know if that's 21 Lafayette or if that's a Church Street address.
I think it's 33 Church.
Dave, you said 21 Lafayette, right?
Yeah, they're not even a butter. They're like 5 houses.
Yeah, 29 Lafayette is really
Is the one
backyard.
right behind them?
Yeah.
I'd really like
21
to hear from the
is,
abutters,
yeah,
especially
21
the
is.
variances. We definitely want to hear from the abutters. Like direct abutters.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem if that direct abutter didn't. I know the lot. I know the family in there. So I have no problem with it, but to your
I mean,
point.
they did get noticed.
Right.
And maybe they're here.
Yeah. Yeah, they did get noticed. I'm sure of that, but I'd feel a lot better. Again, we've done pools inside yards. There are circumstances. This is obviously a very small lot. Totally get it. Very few options to put something on the lot. So, I mean, it seems like the best possible place. It's just, it is so close to the lot lines. It would be good to hear from the direct abutters that they've seen this plan. They know exactly what's going on, and they're okay with it. I'd feel a lot better about granting the variance, even though the variance has to stand on its own in terms of hardship, and as we just heard with another application. So engineering department, no comments. Fire department, no comments. Although Concom, not in their purview, but the good housekeeping and the catch basin in front of the property. When cleaning and draining the pool, the catch basin discharges to Lake Quannapowitt. So that's noteworthy. They're gonna do some maintenance or try to drain the pool, should be draining into the catch basin. If it were to proceed. So board members, I don't know how you're feeling. I'd feel a lot better if we heard from the direct abutters.
The homeowners have tried to accommodate for situations, like I said, there was a shed that was right on much closer than the pool is gonna be. And that shed's been removed in order to put the pool in at a farther away distance.
Is there a fence on that property line?
Fenced. It's a 6-foot privacy fence.
Wish we had some pictures to understand.
Yeah. The both sides, the rear and the side of that property are completely fenced with a privacy fence 6 feet high. I do understand your concern with the abutters, but respectively, this is a pool and timing is important to this. So dragging this out into a season.
Yeah, and Dave, I hear you too, but I don't see a problem with it. And what are we gonna do? Even if we continued it, there's no guarantee that we're gonna hear from the abutters. So unless we hear from them, if there's some folks waiting in public testimony tonight, that might reveal something. Otherwise, we're,
It's let let's open it up to the public and see what happens, I guess, right?
Yeah, it
Can we-
could be.
can we
I see a
request-
hand raised already. It could be.
I mean, my thought with that is I get it, but I mean, we just talked about a shed being moved, but the use is extremely different. Like, you know, yeah, it's not used at all times, but it is used when, you know, nice weather, when windows are open, kids are screaming. So, you know, I have kids that eat. So I think I'm with Dave. I get it, but what's, you know, if it's going to be there for 30 years, you know,
I believe there's an
2
appeals
weeks.
period, isn't there? Before we can start, before the permit can be issued, isn't there an appeals period?
If we were to approve it, there would be, and file the decision, there's an appeal period of 20 days. Someone could challenge it. Yes.
Yeah, I hear
We
you.
usually
but-
don't like to go that route. I'd rather just, if we heard from them, if we knew they were okay with it, then yeah, there'd be an appeal period, but chances are it would stand up to that and then move
I
forward.
understand that, but a continuance in a situation like this and then an appeals period. You know, you're halfway into the summer here.
I hate to tell you, but you're not making a very good case for yourself because of denial, you're nowhere in the summer.
I understand, but
Okay, so just let us keep going.
We've continued pools. No, many times, or not many
Yeah.
times, but we have continued pools before. So
And this is when it landed on our lap, mid-May, could have been January, you know, and there'd be a lot more lead time. So it is what it is. But board members, anything else? We can open it up and then come back for discussion. All right,
Well, to
go
the,
ahead, Jim. Did you have something?
yeah, to the comment that was made here just briefly by one of the members, is the activity in the pool basically right next door to another neighbor could be disadvantageous to them. Because we've had this before where someone wanted to put a pool in, and we've had several abutters basically complain because it was going to be too active and the neighborhood's full of kids. And so, you know, we don't know whether this neighbor would object because of what it would produce. I mean, if it's a bunch of adults, it's one thing. Bunch of kids, it's another thing, I suppose. On the other hand, adults can be as bad as kids.
It's not worse.
I guess just without, you know, we had one over on Sweister where the guy built himself into needing a side yard pool. This lot is really constrained. That guy started with a blank slate, built a brand new huge house, and then asked for a pool and got his variance. And there wasn't much pushback from the board.
didn't we make him move it? I think there was pushback. We made him move it. Not to a side yard.
He was in the side yard. So here we have a very constrained lot with an existing structure in a very similar situation. I get that the setback's a little bit smaller than what we granted up on Sweister, but you know, there's precedent for this board to do this. That's all I'm saying.
I guess and I'll leave it at this too. We're not saying it's a bad. I think what we've heard is everyone is on this board would be okay with it if we definitely heard from the neighbor. I think we had letters from the neighbor in the Sweetser case. That's the difference. Not that it's in the, you know, we don't like it or anything like that. I don't think we've heard that tonight. So.
No, I just don't want to hear that when we're done, they're like, how the heck did this happen?
No,
I didn't know this was happening. Not everybody gets what they get sent to them as far as notice, like, why am I getting this?
And it's literally the
Let's
blurb
see,
that's in the
let's
legal.
see what happens in public testimony, if there is any.
Okay, well, let's do that. We'll open up a public testimony. If anyone has a comment or question, please raise your hand. I see one hand up, Jay Henshaw.
I'm sorry, that's not supposed to have happened. That's
Oh,
me.
that's you. Oh.
That's Jay.
For some reason, I lost connection for a second, so it's doing some
okay.
great stuff.
Sorry, Jay. It's getting late for me. Anyone else from the public have a comment or question?
There you go.
Not seeing any hands going up. So we're not getting any public testimony tonight. Back to the board. Close it to public testimony.
I mean, I guess I'm with Tom, you know, and I never say we set precedent, everyone stands on their own, but at the same point, they were noticed. There's nobody here raising their hand and, you know, the fallback would be that you were noticed and you were, you know, and they could appeal if all of a sudden something started or they read it late. I don't know.
They could. No, all I'm saying is I'd feel better. Yeah, I'm not saying
Oh, I'd feel
I
better
wouldn't
too.
proceed, but I would feel better, and I think other board members would too. Just
Yeah.
increase our comfort level. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that getting that feedback means, you know, they've proven hardship or any of the requirements for a variance. It's just, we've been in these situations where abutters have been okay with things and abutters have not been okay. And I know we've felt better as a board just moving forward and even with the requirements of a variance, that it's not something that hopefully will come back and, you know, collectively bite us. So, so with that, board members, anyone else have any comments or questions before we potentially proceed to a vote on this?
I'm with Chip. I mean, if they were noticed, if they're not here, then, you know, it's the whole reason for the notice process.
It is. Some people don't get it. They get a little postcard and they don't really understand what it is, but it is part of the legal process. They were noticed. But to Chip's point, not everyone gets it, what it's for, what it means. But hopefully if they get a card, they could go knock on their neighbor's fence or door and say, hey, what's this? What are you doing? But hopefully they already know about it. You know, hopefully they already know about it. All right. So with that, if anyone wanted to make a motion again, now there's two parts to this, right? There's two parts of the variance. A, the setback, and B, the side yard. So it's really two different paragraphs that are parts of the bylaw that need relief.
Right, C5 and C6
Correct.
of 190-31.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll make the motion under duress. I move that we grant the variance under Article 190-31C6 to allow the above ground pool to encroach upon the side yard setback. Well, no, first of all, let's allow I'll restart. I move that we grant the variance under Article 190-31C5 to allow the pool to be placed in the side yard, as shown to us by the plot plan dated 3/23/22 from Alexander Crucioli, land surveyor, Gloral Associates.
Okay.
I'll second, not under duress.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, regular voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
I move that we grant the variance as depicted in the Gloral Associates plan dated 3/23/22 to allow a 4-foot side yard setback for the pool, just given a variance to be placed in the side yard.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All right, same voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that too is unanimous. All right, Jay, variance is granted.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm sure the family appreciates it.
Have a good night.
Let's hope the neighbor does.
I'll ask them to keep it down.
Before you leave, Jay, does
Yep.
Gail have your contact info? Because I'll be drafting this decision.
Sure, I believe they do, but I can give it to them if you do.
Or if you have Gail's, if you can just reach out,
I'll make sure she has it. but-
just so I know how to reach you. Yeah, when I have got the decision.
Okay,
And you can share it with the applicant or whatever, but just so we get keep it
sure.
moving, and I'll get to you the draft as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'll get that information over.
Thank you.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Thank you.
All right, board members, there was an item on our agenda for other matters on 500 Main Street. We were asked to move that to the next hearing. They're not ready to discuss that. I think they're updating some information there. So that's been tabled under other matters. There is another matter at 113 Water Street. Yan Aromatherapy to discuss some signage.
Yes, we have.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening,
So-
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for your patience again. Do you have some plans that you can share with us and then talk us through
Yes.
what you'd like to do?
Yep, I'll put them up.
Okay, great. Okay, we can see your screen. Do you want to take us through what you're proposing to do?
Yes, there's an existing sign there now. We just request that we just change the name on that sign.
That's it, same style, same type.
That's identical.
Okay. Nothing in the windows, nothing's changing in the windows or,
No, all that's staying as is, if okay.
okay.
I don't think the open lit sign is allowed in reality, even though everybody has, them. Right, Jim?
Which one's that?
The neon open lit sign.
No. You know, on neon, I don't think there's an issue with that because this is the old section of the
Okay.
code. But the sign, let me just point out that the sign they're proposing is compliant under the older code. And the window sign needs to be 10%. So the only thing I find is the one on the left. That sign basically is not compliant because it can't be greater than 10% of any one of the glass areas.
Okay, this is
So
gonna
they can have a sign in each window, but it can't be greater than 10% of the glass area.
okay.
But other than that, I think they're
But
fine.
just out of curiosity, why is this in front of us?
Because it's part of what is it, the sub shop or whatever it's there.
Oh, and we contain.
It's all, the whole
Okay,
building,
it's all connected.
yeah, the whole
Okay.
building ends up basically.
And they had to come back to us because of that. Okay, not because of, okay, I'm fine. Good. Thank you.
Yep, yeah, we retain jurisdiction on sign
Yeah.
changes. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it seems fine to me, with the comments noted. Anyone else have a comment or question? Okay, so with that, why don't we proceed to, we should probably just have a motion to approve the sign as presented. Is there a date on this plan? I know it was sent to us, but let's see, do we have a,
And do we need to reference, Dave, would you reference in your decision back to the original retaining jurisdiction part?
yeah, I'd have to find, yes, it's like,
Okay,
yeah,
because I think that would be important to say,
Yeah.
because we have jurisdiction over it, this sign is approved.
yep, so I can see,
There's a date of 4/23/22.
that's what I see at the top, yep.
So you probably want, we don't do public and other, do we?
I can ask, I mean, there might be one or two other people here, so is there any member of the public who has a comment or question about this sign before we proceed? Okay, hearing none. Back to you, Chip.
So I move that we grant permission for Yan Aromatherapy shop sign to be granted to go up in the existing dimensional space as presented to us by the plans dated 4/23/22 this evening.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, voting members, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes,
Jim,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So that's unanimous. So,
Dave, I think what you're looking for is 5/12/12. as far as the decision.
Okay. Let me make a note of that. I wasn't chairman then, but we'll dig up a copy of it.
Sounds like Jim has one.
Yeah, Michael Pierce was chair.
Yep, yep. Well, if you have an electronic copy handy, you want to send it to me, otherwise I'll chase Gail.
And we had
Dave, I
Mr.
gave you the folder. I think it's in the folder.
Oh, in the back? Oh, sorry, I didn't know that far
Yep.
back. Okay. All right,
And we had Mr. Falvey too.
okay,
All right.
cool. All right, well, thank you for your patience. We'll get this written up and you should be good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board.
All right, good luck to you.
All right, good night. Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, board members, item 5, any clerk or board comments? Any updates tonight?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them, just quickly.
Quickly, there's 3 minutes left in a 4-point game.
Hey. So,
None.
so I've had a meeting with Ben and Chris, not a civil engineer. I think it was somebody from the client or contractor like on Tarrant Lane. And it seems that they are pushing basically to get their foundation permit, which I think people have heard. And at that meeting, I pointed out there are no foundation permits to give a permit to within the set that's been submitted to us and to the building department, except partial plans. So he was adamant that there was another set of drawings. He was going to get them to Ben so I could look at them. Ben hasn't seen them. I haven't seen them. So they're not getting any foundation permit until we actually have foundations on that job, at least drawings for foundations.
Okay,
Thank
Harvard-
you for all that, by the way.
You're welcome. So the next is Harbert Mill on Thursday, the 24th, 3 o'clock. Amy and I are taking hopefully the final walk, which as I remember was basically only landscape product basically that was over there that was either replaced in some cases, which wasn't a big deal, or other stuff basically that was planted late and we couldn't even see it come out of the ground. So hopefully it's out of the ground by now. So that's on the 24th. We'll close that topic hopefully. And then, let's see. 610 Salem. There are several issues basically on that. They go into 3 categories. One is Peter Sandor basically has made some modifications to some windows on there, either eliminating or doubling them up or turning them into singles. I don't see it as a big issue. Quite frankly, it doesn't change the architecture in my mind. And if I can get the rest of what I'm going to discuss here taken care of, I'd like the board to allow me to approve the set with these minor modifications, so to speak, in the design. Now, the other 2 issues are the landscape drawings are not dated as to what we finally approved. And they are of an earlier date, and the same with the civil drawings. My understanding is that in fact, those drawings are at the building department, but were issued separately, are not in the set that I brought home today to look at. And so that being the case, they need to pull those drawings out and resubmit the drawings within a full set bound. But if they do that, then I'd like to just sort of sign off, assuming everybody's fine with my making determination that the window changes are minuscule.
but don't we have to find that as a board?
That's up to you. You tell me.
We have to find it as a board. We can do it.
It can be a quick thing, assuming it's just a few reconfiguration of windows. Wouldn't see it as a big thing, but I think it's a matter of just handling it the way we would handle any other changes after we've approved plans, is let's just get a quick look at them.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
So they can get with Gail and get on our next agenda on other matters. We could even take it up early if it's deemed to be quick or whatever, but
Peter's already marked them. He's flagged them on the drawings already so that we know exactly what we're looking at. So
okay, okay.
it's all set to go.
Okay.
Foundry State 62 Foundries come in. Gail told me today, so I'm gonna start look at that next. And then on the point that Joe brought up on 404 Lowell Street, I just quickly, while we're on the line here, I looked through all the decision stuff. I could not find, like we've done on Main Street and other areas, where there's any control over the process of construction. Time of start of finish, that sort of thing. It might be something in there, but I can't find it. And there were two decisions, basically, one with the original builder and then a second follow-up after that. And there's no paperwork I can find in there in my quick scan. It seems to stand out to me. Now, it might be there. I don't know, but I'm betting it's not.
Okay, I'll have a look. I can pull up the decision later and see. But okay, well, thanks. Anything else, Jim?
Nope.
Thanks, Jim.
Any other board member comments, updates? Okay. Approval of minutes, item 6 of April 27th.
I move that we approve the minutes from April 27th.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, Chip,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Greg,
Thanks.
Greg,
Yes.
Mickey.
Yes.
All right.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Bird.
All right. All
Good night.
in favor to adjourn, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thanks for your time tonight.